Revelation 5 of the God of the impossible. There's another Old Testament story which we tend to think of as a great little story for kids. But, well, it is a great little story for kids, but it's also a great story for adults. And that's Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was one of the people taken by the Babylonians into exile. And what the Babylonians did was they chose some young men who were intelligent and good looking and everything else to be trained up as in the Babylonian culture and language to then serve in the palace of the king. And Daniel was one of the 4 that they chose. He was a young man of great faith, and he reigned absolutely steadfast to God, to the point where when they first arrived in Babylon, they were told they were going to be given special food to make them healthy, but it was food that God had said the Jewish people should not touch. And so Daniel objected and said, okay, for 10 days, if I just eat vegetables and water, the 4 of us, then compare that with others who are being fed the king's special diet and see who's the healthier. And after 10 days, Daniel and his 3 mates were much healthier looking than the others, and so he was allowed to keep eating that particular diet. He excelled in learning because God was giving him great abilities, and he entered the king's service. And the king found that these 4 men of Israel were far wiser than any of his magicians or astrologers. Now one day that king had a dream, and he wanted to know from his wise men what the dream was and what its meaning was. And of course all the astrologers and so on, they had no idea. They couldn't tell him what his dream was. And so he ordered that all the wise men in the realm were to be executed, including Daniel and his 3 companions. When Daniel heard this, they got down to prayer. And during the night, God revealed to Daniel what the dream was and what it meant. And so he was able to go to the king and say to him, look, no wise man, no astrologer could ever tell you what the dream was, but there is a God who can. So when he told the king what the dream was all about, the king's response was this: surely your God is the God of all gods, the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries. So he put Daniel in a high position. He put the other 3 in as administrators in the provinces. Now these other 3 were also very bold, and at one time they were told that whenever a certain trumpet sounded, they had to bow down and worship a statue of the king, and of course they refused. And in refusing, their punishment was to be thrown into a furnace, which they were, but they survived. And so when they came out of the furnace, the king made a decree that no one of any nation or language was to say anything against the God of these men. So he's slowly learning who God is. Now it was the next king, King Darius, who wanted to put Daniel in charge of the whole kingdom. But this made others very jealous, and so they plotted to get at Daniel. They made the king pass a decree that anyone who prayed to any other god but the king for the next 30 days would be put in a den of lions. Now, of course, Daniel was not going to pray to any other god, and he was going to continue praying to God. And 3 times a day he did so. But his enemies were spying. They caught him out praying. They took him to the king, and the king was very upset because he was very fond of Daniel. But in the laws of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be changed, the law and the decree had been made. Daniel had to be put in this den of hungry lions. The king didn't sleep that night, and he was up at the crack of dawn to go and see if Daniel was still there, and of course he was. And they found no wound on him because Daniel had trusted God, and Daniel had never wronged the king. And so the king saw the awesome power of God, that he sent this edict throughout the whole land that everyone must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. Faithful obedience through thick and thin allowed the power of God to be displayed and altered the attitude of a whole nation.